All right, I've done like 100 clinics in the past year and a half, and to my surprise, I've learned that most guitar players out there don't have a clue about what modes are, and a lot of them who do know about them are really confused by them. So I decided that since it's such an important thing, that I was going to try to cover it here in very simple terms. I'm going to show you the way I look at it, and hopefully I can clear it up for people that are confused. And for those of you who know nothing about modes, I hope you can see how important they really are to your guitar playing, your improvisation, and also your songwriting. So let's get started on these. I'm going to use the key of C major for my examples, and of course everybody knows the notes in C major are C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. The first thing we should do is look at a chord scale in the key of C major. These are going to be all the chords, the basic major and minor chords in this particular key. Okay, so the first chord is going to be C, obviously, it's the root. The second chord is going to be D minor. The third chord is E minor. Fourth chord is F. And then G, A minor, and then B half diminished. Or you could call that a B minor 7 flat 5. It's the exception chord here. It breaks the rule because there's a flat 5, so it's a little weird. And then, of course, we'd be back to our octave C major. So there you see we have 7 different chords based on the key of C major. And it's really important to know that each chord is related to the key of C major. None of the notes in any of the chords goes outside of the key of C major. Everything is related. It's all the same notes, but just starting from a different point within the scale. So the first thing to learn about modes, which is actually the hardest, is remembering the stupid names. You know, some guy probably 15,000 years ago named these, and he probably did it just to confuse us guitar players in the 20th century. But anyway, it's real important to remember the names of these, so I'm going to give you the names, and through the magic of television, we'll flash them across the screen. Okay, the names of the modes are Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Told you that was pretty weird. Okay, it's important to remember 2 things, as I said before, the names of the modes and also the order in which they come in, because the order in which they were just listed and that I just mentioned them in is consistent. That's always the order they come in, and so remember that order. Kind of like your alphabet. Okay, so we could say that each chord we covered here in the C major scale represents a different mode. Each chord was a different step of the major scale, and so is each mode. And that's what modes are all about. So let's cover the names, and I'll show you what chords represent what modes. Okay, the first chord, C, which is the root, represents Ionian mode. Now, remember this rule, that Ionian mode is always a major scale. It's always the root of a major key. So if somebody said, let's jam in C Ionian, you would know that you were in the key of C major. If somebody said they wanted to jam in G Ionian, then you'd know very simply that you were in the key of G major. So it's a very easy rule. You know, Ionian is always the major scale or the major key you're in. Okay. So the next is Dorian, which is represented in this particular key by D minor. We know 2 things about Dorian. We know Dorian is typically a minor chord, and also that it is the second step of a major scale. Okay, the next mode would be Phrygian, which is represented by E minor. Phrygian is typically a minor chord, and also it is the 3rd step of a major scale. Okay, the 4th step is Lydian, which is F in this case. The 5th step is Mixolydian, which is major, which is G. The 6th step is A minor, which is Aeolian. Now, okay, here's rule number 2. Everybody knows that a major key has a relative minor. In this particular key, C major, the relative minor is A minor. And this represents Aeolian mode. So the rule is, Aeolian mode always represents the minor scale or the minor key that you're playing in. So remember that, because it's going to be easy to relate things to that later. Okay, so our final chord here is going to be the B minor 7 flat 5, or the B half diminished. It's going to represent Locrian. This is the weird one in the bunch. So that completes the 7 different modes. So I showed you all the chords in a major scale, and we showed you what chords represent what modes by the name. Okay, so the next thing I recommend that you do is put all these chords on tape, either with a drum machine or a click track so you can keep time, and practice playing a 1-octave scale over the different modes. So in other words, start first with a C chord, put that on tape, and play a C scale over top of it in 1 octave. And that'll give you an idea of what Ionian mode sounds like. So let's move up to the next chord, or the next mode, which is Dorian. Here, put a D minor on tape, and play a D Dorian mode. And one thing I want to stress before I move on here is right there on the D Dorian mode, I didn't play a D minor scale, I didn't play a D major scale, I played a D Dorian mode, and all that is basically a C scale but starting from a D note. So don't get confused and think just because I'm starting with a D here that I'm going outside of the key of C major. I'm not. I'm using all the same notes, and as I will with all these different modes. And I would kind of relate this to the piano. It's if you played all the white keys on the piano, you'd be playing in the key of C major, obviously. You could start a scale on the C note and play, and you'd be in C major. You could also start a scale on the D note, the E note, the F note, any note. As long as you played all white keys, you'd still be in the key of C major. So don't get confused and think I'm going out of key here. I'm not. All right, so the next mode is Phrygian, so put the E minor chord on tape and play the mode over it. Okay, then move up to the F chord, which is Lydian. And that gives you a good idea of what the Lydian mode sounds like. And then the next chord would be G, which would be Mixolydian, and play that particular mode over top of the G. It's a good idea of what Mixolydian sounds like. The next mode is Aeolian, which is A minor, which we said was the root of the minor scale. We put that on tape and play a 1-octave scale over it. And then our final mode is going to be Locrian. It's going to be the B minor 7 flat 5 chord. So that gives you a good idea of what Locrian mode sounds like.